the button, pulling up the notes. Here we go. It is Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance, Weekly Scrap, number 197. My guest tonight is Anthony Avillo. He retired as Deputy Chief of North Hudson, New Jersey, Regional Fire and Rescue after 30 years in the fire service. He is the author of the book, Fireground Strategies, which is close to being in the 4th edition. It's had 3 editions that are amazing. He is the co-author of Full Contact Leadership. Avillo is the Region 3 Director of the ISFSI. He is a member of the Advisory Board for Fire Engineering and was the recipient of the 2012. Man, he has the honors, the accolades, the degrees, the papers, and despite all that, he still agreed to come on here and talk to me and have a good conversation. So with all of that being said, I am looking forward to this. My friend, Anthony Avillo, it's my honor and pleasure to have you on as the guest of Weekly Scrap number 197. Welcome, my brother.
Thank you, Corley. Thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me. It was great when I finally really had a kind of a chance to talk to you down in Orlando, and obviously we'll talk tonight. But I followed your stuff. I've seen how your meteoric rise with the scrap. I followed the scrap, and keep up the good work, brother. It's all good.
Thank you very much. Is there anything I missed in the intro? Anything you want to add that I left out?
I got 2 beautiful daughters.
Nice. Very nice. No, I love that. There we go. Audience, as everybody's logging in, people are logging in as we speak.
Oh, nice.
Here we go. James Mr. Lisco says, evening, brothers and sisters. 3 bugled firefighter checking in from Indy. Super stoked. Sean Bryan said, let's go. NHRFR Deputy 1 from Kevin Cowan. Max points. So he's predicting, I guess he's predicting you get max. I'm trying to get that. John Patton said, let's rock and roll. Smoothbore Cartel, Kyle Romagus is here. He is grabbing your questions. I'll talk about that in a second. He said, boom. So many people logging in. John Shackelford, 2 thumbs up. Get your chin straps ready from Patrick Workus. Yes. All right. We're getting fired up. Okay. Quick announcements. First off, Kyle Romagus is here in the chat. Please post your questions for Chief Avillo and myself. If you have questions, please post them. Kyle Romagus will grab them and throw them at us. Quick announcements. If you want to be a part of the Vigilantes, if you want to be a member of the exclusive Cool Kids Club, go to firehousevigilance.com, sign up, become a vigilante. The coolest thing we're doing now, we did it for the first time last week, which is after the scrap is over, when we go off the air, we actually stay and talk with our guest, if the guest is willing, of course. I haven't asked Anthony yet if he's willing, but and he gets feedback from the audience, and the vigilantes get to sit there and tell them what they thought, and of course ask questions private. It's the scrap after party is what we call it. Cool. So if you want to be a part of that, go to the Firehouse Vigilance and sign up. Last week's was the first one we've ever done. Tonight's will be the second. Now on to the sponsors, pay the bills, and then we'll get to the scrap. The OG sponsor of the scrap, Key Hose. Check them out on Facebook. The Hose Experts, Affordable Drill Towers, home of the Affordable Drill Tower and the Affordable Standpipe Prop. Firefighter, owned and operated. Pump and roll using the Affordable Standpipe Prop. The Affordable Standpipe Prop, it fits through most classroom doorways where you can do standpipe theory in the classroom, and then you roll it out into the parking lot and you can pump to it. It comes with 6 standpipe valves that can be upgraded to PRVs or customized to whatever you have in your jurisdiction. So call Steve, 844-55-TOWER, or drop an email to info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Fire Station Furniture, firestationfurniture.com. They provide a complete line of quality furniture for your firehouse. Firefighter owned and operated. They understand the strain firefighters put on furniture. Man, if firefighters could wrestle in something, they will wrestle in it. But absolutely, they will put on furniture and offer furniture that's built to last. Visit firestationfurniture.com for more information. And then finally tonight, build your culture. It is dedicated to providing fire service training by building upon the basic core fundamentals taught in recruit training. Build Your Culture's mission is to keep the passion for the fire service alive. The mission is not about what we are fighting against. It is what we are fighting for. So I love Sean Duffy. I love Build Your Culture. So there you go. Sponsors out of the way. And with all that being said, let's fire it up There's so many people already commenting, Chief. I can't even get to all the comments coming at you.
That's pretty cool.
I'm going to try and get I'm going to try and get a couple of them coming. You have to be present to command presence. That's a quote of Chief Anthony Avillo coming from James Mitchell Isco, Rochester, New York. Yeah, there we go. Chiming in. All right. So much coming at you. Okay. I'm going to lead off with I always ask the guests, what do you want to talk about? And my guests always send me a comprehensive list of things to talk about. And I always go through it and pick stuff. But I wanted to lead off with something that Chief sent to me, which was the Prime Directive. I love this. I really love this. And I want you to talk about it. But the Prime Directive, nothing can interfere with our ability to maintain the in-service and ready status. So go ahead and go with what you mean by the Prime Directive.
Okay, cool. So this came, it's sort of part of full cultural contact leadership, and it'll be in the fourth edition of Fireground Strategies. But I had a mentor by the name of Ed Flood, and Ed Flood was my captain, and he was always one rank ahead of me. Eventually he retired as the chief of department in North Hudson, and we wrote the leadership book together. And he used to always talk about maintaining your in-service and ready status, and we actually the last class that I had, they actually put it on the back of a shirt, and nothing interferes with your ability to maintain the in-service and ready status of your command, which also includes your equipment, your apparatus, your firehouse, yourself, your people. It sort of follows the mantra that that everything you do off duty is designed to meet the Prime Directive, because once you go out that door, if you are going out that door and you're not in service and ready, something's going to happen on the fireground that's not going to be good. So when I talk about this during the class, my leadership classes and even my command classes in control, your job is to be in service and ready. And if you're a company officer, if you're a chief officer, you're a firefighter. That's really your job in a nutshell, because you got one job, and that's to get out the door. Get out the door in as excellent a fashion as possible, because the people out there, they expect excellence. We're not always excellent. It's a moving target, but that's what they expect. They don't dial 911 for mediocrity. They expect us to be excellent. So your job in that firehouse is to be excellent. And you also want to take that as an officer and, instill that in the people that work for you, because oftentimes those are the guys that are going to notice or see that the in-service and ready status of your apparatus is not, it's not in place. And the idea is that if everybody's working towards that goal, then we're going to go out that door, and we're going to go out that door with excellence. And, because when the curtain goes up, anytime we're less than excellent, it usually takes, more time, more danger, more staffing to get the job done. It's hard to do a reset, and the fire loves timeouts, and we don't have timeouts. It's always third and long, and we can't punt, So if you keep that as your mantra as an officer, you're more than likely going to be more diligent in your job and be better at what you do.
Ooh, I love that. I love it's always third and long, and we can't punt, dude. I love.
You can't.
No, absolutely.
So we run the 32 trap, baby, with a 23 dive, and we get that first down.
First down, just to move the chains.
That's right, baby.
I love it. How that applies to Firehouse and the pre-response activities?
Well, it actually it's really everything. It's everything. You can't compromise that Prime Directive. For instance, one of the things I talk about in the class, and this is like, sometimes it flies in the face of your culture, like, for instance, you get on duty. I'm gonna put my glasses on because I can't see you that well. I look like a doof. You come on duty at 7:30, right? At 7:45, you get an alarm for a report of smoke in a school, and you get in the rig in the right front seat. You're getting ready to go, and you see a guy's walking out of the kitchen. One of them's got a cup of coffee in his hand. The other's got a friggin' newspaper, and they're going over to the rack to get their gear. Like that compromises your in-service and ready status. And that's something that's accepted. Where do these cultures come from? They come from an acceptance of what some people call the deviation of normal, or normal deviation. That that term, right?
No, the normalization of deviance.
Normalization of deviance, right?
Close, maybe, but go ahead.
Yeah. while everybody knows that, getting out the door is the most important thing, we tolerate these things. And now you're looking at probably a 2 to 3 to 4 minute delay in getting out that door, So one of the things that you have to do as an officer is, if there's something that's upsetting and infringing on and compromising your in service and ready status, you got to open your mouth. It may fly in the face of culture, but you know what? Here's another little Avilloism. Know why you got these things on your collar? Know what they stand for? They stand for challenge, controversy, conflict, and unpopularity. Because you put these things on, sometimes that's what you're going to be, and you can't shy away from that. Your job as an officer is to be comfortable, sort of, with being uncomfortable. Right. Sometimes an acceptable discomfort. Not an unacceptable, an acceptable discomfort. And I think that those are the kind of things that your pre-duty activities have to be aimed at. Maintaining this in service and ready status. You can look at a firehouse and you can almost tell, and I mean, you've been around a while. You look at a firehouse, you can almost tell how that firehouse is going to behave. You look in, the rigs are clean, the apparatus is looking good, the guys are respectful. There's a good chance they're in service and ready. But you go to a firehouse, it's dirty, the rigs are sloppy, the table of death is piled up to the ceiling, the guys are laying in the couches like boneless chicken. It's you can just tell, and we're only here for one reason, for the people out there. That's the only reason we're here. If those people aren't out there, we wouldn't even have these great jobs. And then what the hell else would we do? Right. What else could we possibly do? Any of us, to be honest with you. First of all, we'd have to grow up, which is, no, I'm 62. I'm not grown up yet. But I think if you're thinking along those lines when you're dealing with your whatever duties they are, whether it's maintenance of the rig, whether it's the training, whether it's making sure that the equipment is in shape, these are the things that only can occur before you get out that door. Because once you get out that door and things go bad, there's always delays, and it always comes back to haunt us.
Oh, I love it, man. I have like 3 timestamps already written down that I want to try and soundbite, but that's awesome. And what I really want to get to back is the core mission of the fire service is when the tones drop, we go, right? Yep. Tones drop, we go. That's it. And you really touched on it really well there when you said, and there's guys walking out there with a cup of coffee. There are guys walking out there, just moseying out there, eating their breakfast or whatever, or slowly moving to their locker. But we tolerate that. It's become over time. It's just, that's what we do. It's just the tones dropping. No big deal. We got to finish this cup of coffee.
Yeah. Well, what happens is, you have to set an expectation. It's like, listen, okay, so we can't live with that situation. So I'm going to set expectations with my guys, or I'm going to hope that my officers would set expectations with their guys. Look, you know what? You come on duty, you check the apparatus, you put all your gear out, you check with the off-going shift, you check the house journal, then you can go have a cup of coffee. Because if you do all that stuff, if you go get your coffee first, the kitchen's a trap. It's a great trap, it's a great place, but right. If it becomes the trap, you can't get out of there for 45 minutes because everybody's in there, everybody's talking, it's family, So now 45 minutes later, you've already had 3 alarms and your gear, you just fall behind. So one of the things that Chief Flood used to do when he was a captain was we would do all those things, and I don't drink coffee, so I'd go and get my Yoo-hoo. But he would say, okay, now, once that's done, get your coffee, and then we're going to go right back out, and we're going to have our morning at the apparatus meeting. And, we would go over our tool assignments, our equipment, what training that we were doing for the day, so it's sort of starting off on a good foot, and I think it's really, really important that those things are done. And if they're not, then it's the petri dish is getting contaminated.
No, I love, and what is in your opinion, what is the reason that we've kind of lost that? Obviously apparatus readiness, all that comes first. Getting ready comes first. We all know this, even if we've let it slide, we know this in our heart and our soul. But just having that morning apparatus, the roll call at the rig, why has that gone away, do you think, in the modern American fire service?
I don't know. To be quite honest with you, I was never in a department that did it. We never did it in North Hudson. We never did it in Weehawken, which was part of, is now part of the regional, but we never did it. I know that, some other departments did do it. I'm not sure. And some departments you'd have to come in class A's and then change into station wear. Other departments, you would come in regular clothes and change into station wear. Um, I, you know, that's there's a certain amount of formality to that, and maybe that formality kind of keeps you sort of, I don't want to use the word in line, but kind of keeps it real a little
Right?
bit,
No, no.
But I think what happens is sometimes we just get too comfortable, and it's the office's job to recognize when that's happening, when they're getting too comfortable, that's something can happen that is not going to be good for the company or the department.
No, I
It's
like
okay to
that.
be comfortable. Officers shouldn't be nitpicking that, you don't go picking on stuff, but you know what? You got one job. Make sure we get out that door. And whatever it takes to do that is your job.
No, I love it. I love it. And if you can keep that focus, then everything else kind of snaps into focus, right?
Yeah,
No,
exactly. Because your people know what the main, they know the friggin' prime directive, man.
there you go. There you
And
go.
that's what it is.
I
When
don't know
I
if I
do
can.
the
I don't know if I
leadership
can do it.
class,
I can do
almost
it.
the
Folk.
whole
I can. I
class,
can. Yeah, there we go.
the whole class it always sort of leads back to the prime directive. It's kind of interesting, and these are all things that I got from Flood. These a lot of this stuff. These are Floodisms.
So, do you want me to go to flood isms? Because I like a villa. I wrote down a villa isms, but do you want me to go to flood isms and and the need for a solid mentor? Or do you want me to go towards your history and kind of your story? Which way you want to go?
Well, my history includes Ed Flood.
All right, let's start with your history then. Let's go with North Hudson and kind of your story. Just kind of give us your
Okay,
story, the synopsis.
okay. Just in a nutshell, I've been really fortunate in my career in the fire service. It's that it's just the love of the job, and I'm out 8 years now, and yeah, now I'm going to the end of my career, but I'm out 8 years, and one of the things I miss the most is the response. There is nothing in the human experience like pulling up on a working fire. Nothing, So I started out in Weehawken. Weehawken is where the Lincoln Tunnel is. We're directly where we work. North Hudson is directly across the Hudson River from New York City, Manhattan,
Right.
and North Hudson has about 80,000 people a square mile. There's always two exposure problems. Whenever we have a fire, it's always rush hour. It's the most densely populated area in America. So I got on the job in 1984, and I was in college. I was playing football in college, and I came home, and everybody that I knew had taken the exam for North Bergen, which is another town. I'm from North Bergen, and there were no more applications left. So my cousin was a captain there, and he said, "Hey, go over to Weehawken, same application, state test. Put your name down for Weehawken. Sometimes they take off a county list." So I put my name down for Weehawken, and North Bergen has a hiring freeze. Nobody gets hired there. I get hired in Weehawken. My first day on the job, Ed Flood meets me, and I knew him from the gym, but now it's real. Now he's a captain.
Right.
He's a captain. Yeah. And he says to me, "When you leave here tomorrow morning, if this place isn't a little bit better because you were here, then you didn't do your job."
Ooh.
And I believed it then. I believe it now. I pass it on to everyone that I know. He was a big believer in taking care of the job so that the job takes care of you. It doesn't. It's not the other way around. That being on a job is a privilege, but making the job better is your responsibility. And we stand on the shoulders of giants, but we always want to add a little more to Mount Rushmore. Add a little bit more. And that was one of the things that I was thinking about, and I don't know where it's going to come out somehow, but, like, who would you want? Who's in your Mount Rushmore? That might be, who's in your Mount Rushmore? Who's the four guy, right? There's four in Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
the four
Yeah.
guys that influence your career, and then, you know, whose Mount Rushmore are you in?
Ooh,
So,
even better. Yeah. No, that like
yeah,
levels,
interesting.
levels.
So I made captain in Weehawken, and I made battalion chief, and then in 1999 they merged 5 fire departments: Union City, North Bergen, Weehawken, West New York, and Guttenberg. we had been dispatched out of the same place. We did automatic aid all the time. So it just kind of made sense. But we often joke that, they took 5 understaffed departments and made one bigger understaffed department. But, I went from 10 guys on a response, which included me and a pump operator, to, about 30 on a response. And, we ran 10 engines, 4 ladders, a rescue, 3 battalions. Myself, I was eventually the ship commander, the deputy. And our response times are like, 3 minutes on the scene because everything's so congested. We cover about 9 square miles. We have New York City on our east end, huge cliffs, all the population, most of it, well, a lot of it down below now, all the waterfront development, up above, and then big steep hills leading down to the Meadowlands. On our south is Jersey City and Hoboken. On our north is Bergen County, a bunch of volunteer departments. Listen, we worked well with as well. And on our west is the Meadowlands, where, Jimmy Hoffa is buried and the Giants play. But, we wound up, we didn't get a contract for 5 years. We had, they used to call it the ARC. We had 2 chiefs. We had 2 different start times. We had 7 contracts, 9 vacation schedules. And for 5 years, it went on like that. And
wow.
Till we got a unification contract. But the end of the day, it was about the Fireground. And I know you mentioned Kevin Cowan. Kevin Cowan came on as in the regional. He wasn't in one of the older departments, so he doesn't know the older departments. But he's a battalion chief now in North Hudson, and he's one of those he's a throwback. Him, his brother Patty, they're throwbacks. They get it. They understand the job. Everybody on your show is they drank the Kool-Aid. And that's 100%. A beautiful thing. But the regional department, like we get a lot of work. And just recently they had 3 multiple simultaneous multiples. Now, in 2001, we had 4 4-alarm fires at one time. And New York City came in, and we called it the Night of Flames. And it was a very primitive. Flood was the chief of department, and we used an area command, which nobody called it at that time.
Right.
But 21 years to the day, they had a 4 or 5 alarm apartment building fire, and about a half an hour later, a fully involved bowstring truss in Union City. Same time. Right. So you figure when's that going to happen? It was 21 years since the last one. Boom. 2 months later, 5 stores in Western New York, 4 stores in Union City. And then another month later, 5 buildings in Union City and 4 buildings in Weehawken, all at the same time. And I wish I was there. I have to say, I was so jealous that I wasn't at those
right.
And a lot of the guys that, of course, I knew, my colleagues and everything, were there, and you almost like you missed the big game, But we've had a really good run in North Hudson. We were first on the scene at the Sully incident with the plane in the river. We were over on, we went over to New York City on not 9/11, we went 9/12, 13, 14.
Sure.
We've kind of been in the midst of the storm, so to speak, because we're just such a densely populated, urban area. And, I always tell people, you want to fight fires, you want to be challenged by fires, come to North Hudson.
Come to North Hudson, get challenged.
Come to North Hudson, man. But it's all good.
Dude, I love the story. I absolutely love the story, especially come together when you had 7. What did you say? 7 contracts, 7 vacation schedules. I can't
7 contracts, 9 vacation schedules.
Whatever it worked out to. That's insane to me. We have
it
trouble
was
with one vacation schedule. We have trouble.
Yeah, and you have, you had people like, you would be right away in the beginning, North Bergen might have had a guy that banged out 6, so they need a guy that can drive a tiller. So they'll be sending a guy from Union City up to North Bergen, and they had different start times, and the guy don't even know where the Firehouse is, and it was almost an every day doing manning with people we didn't really know, and this guy don't get along with that guy, and he's a good cook, but his feet stink, and it was almost like Flood wrote an article for Fire Engineering about it, but it was almost like a very sort of romantic time in a way.
Right.
If you can get that.
I get it. I completely get it. No, I love that.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And one thing I want to pluck out of there that you said, which is really cool, and because everybody says leave it better than you found it. We've all heard that since day one of rookie school. Leave it better than you found it. But I love, and I've never taken your leadership class, so bear with me if this. But you said leave the station better than you found it at the end of the shift.
Mm-hmm.
Brother, that's a microcosm that you can really wrap your head around. That's so
Mm-hmm.
much better than that, like out there in the big stratosphere of leave the job better than you found it. No, that's leave the rig better than you found it. Leave the station. Leave your shift. That's awesome.
Well, one of the things that I talk about in my leadership classes, I ask the question, where does leadership on a fireground come from? And you get all different kinds of answers. And in reality, where does it come from? It comes out of the firehouse. If you ain't leading in the firehouse, you ain't leading on the fireground. And everything else that comes out of the firehouse, safety sense, team sense, discipline, accountability, communications, most of all, officering. You can't officer in the firehouse, you ain't officering on the fireground. So that's also part of the whole full leadership, sort of like full circle type of thing, and leaving it better than you found it and all that. You can't do it in the firehouse. The 99% of the time or 98% of the time you're in that firehouse is going to dictate the 2% of the time you're on that fireground. Nobody's that good when they can flip that switch and be a mouch in the firehouse and a superstar on the fireground. Doesn't work. You know what a mouch is, right?
Oh yeah, half
man, half couch.
There you
go. Yeah, it's you have to be engaged completely all the time. Even when you're napping, which is okay. Even when you're napping, you got to be engaged. And I tell people, you're a 24/7 officer. You have people call you at home when you're off duty. They call you and say, hey, what's this? What's that? I heard about this stuff. I want to find out about that stuff. I need this stuff. What's happening? That, they call you at home. You know why? Because you're a leader even when you're not there. And that's a big responsibility.
No, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Okay, we got questions coming at you. So I've been neglecting them, so we've been doing stories, and that's great. I've loved it. Sean Bryan, I don't know if you know him or not. And my caveat always to my guest is I don't know the ins and outs of people that know each other, if there's inside jokes or ball busting going on or anything like that. So please bear. But he said, ask Chief about flow paths, wind impacted fire before they were a thing. LOL, case study, 18th Kennedy Boulevard, ? So again.
Okay. Well, we almost never have a fire in a high rise that's not wind driven, or even an apartment building. So as I said, we have the cliffs on the east and the hills on the west, right? So we almost always have wind driven fires, and they're extremely challenging. We had 18 guys burned at a fire because there were problems with the standpipes. And I do a class called strategic decision making, and part of it is a case study of that particular fire. But the 18th Street fire, I was actually a battalion chief at the time, and it was a 5-story ordinary. It was set back about 125 feet, and we got up on a fire floor, and the wind was blowing into the Charlie side of the building at about 50 miles an hour, and no exaggeration. And we could see the fire in the back, but the heat coming down the hallway was incredible. And I remember the water steaming in the apartment on the floor, and of course the guy's helmet steaming. So we tried to get down there. We had to go down and make a bend to get into the fire area, and we were trying to get down this hallway. And so we were trying to get down. We used 1 3/4 inches, wasn't making it. So 2nd 1 3/4 inches showed up, and we tried to do it with that as well, and we weren't making it with that. So at that point, and we didn't know it, the fire had extended to the floor above. So the battalion chief at the time, who was in charge, and this is before regionalization, Nicky Gazzillo, great chief officer. He was eventually a deputy in North Hudson. He pulled us out, and he said, let's just hit this with the telesquirt. So, we were trying to attack it to a flow path, which was, really, really tough to do. So Zillow said, we're going to pull you guys out. So we went down to the floor below, and it was like, it's like projects. They're like fire resistant apartment buildings, like projects. So we like ovens. We went down to the floor below the fire. Other people came out of the building. They did the roll call and they utilized the telesquirt to knock the fire down. But it only kind of knocked down. It didn't knock down everything because it was a deep apartment. While that was going on, now Chief Flood was on the scene and he was at the back of the building. And he comes up to me and he calls to me and he says, "Listen," he goes, why don't you guys take that line, bring it into the adjacent apartment, bring it out in a fire escape, and attack from the backside of the building." So after they used the telesquirt for a bit, let the building settle, we wound up getting a 2.5, and we got 2 or 3 more companies to pull this thing up to like the 3rd floor. And that was the plan we did. We went out in a fire escape, we turned it around, and we utilized the flow path, I guess, at our back. And this was a time when nobody was talking about flow paths.
Sure.
It was just
The term didn't exist, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of friggin' fire here, and it's blowing right in our faces. So let's be smart. Let's work smarter. And we utilized the fire escape and came from the Charlie to the Alpha side. And it was, and in fact, they came through the window, and I didn't even go in the window because there was just too many guys, and these guys were just on a mission, and I watched where they were, and they just pushed this fire right out of the building at that point, and it worked, and it was about an incident commander who understood what was going on, great communications between division commanders, and the willingness to sort of go, to change strategies, and have that coordination. It was, I change a lot in my book from the editions. That one is still in on the 4th edition because it was such a good example of fireground command and control, and the proper use of strategy and tactics.
Right on. Now I want to touch on. No, I want to touch on something there because ego is such a big. I mean, ego. I don't care what size department you are, ego plays into it because people are involved. How hard is it? And you've been to a lot of fires, and you've commanded a lot of fires. How hard is it to let go of a strategy that you've locked in? You sink your teeth into. Is there anything that's ever kicked it for you where you're like, hold on, like something I can pass on to these people that are listening? Like if you think these things, you might need to check your ego and say, hey, I'm trying too hard to hold on. Anyway, if that question makes sense.
Okay, yeah, it does. It does. Well, first of all, here's a good quote for you. Ego and emotion cannot exist in the same space as leadership and rank. Right? So, and the fire has no ego. The fire only knows one thing: it's going to burn, and it's going to burn until we stop it, right? Or it runs out of fuel. So, have I lost buildings? Absolutely. Have I sort of been, I don't want to use the word fooled, but have I sort of been surprised by the fire's move? Sometimes when you have buildings that where they're different than we thought they were, so to speak, renovations, things like that. But I always, quite honestly, I always tried to keep an open mind and always tried to keep that, while they're working on this, I'm thinking about this. And I'm thinking about, like I would always set up one more water supply than I was using. So if I'm using 2, I'm setting up 3. I'm using 3, I'm setting up 4. We use manifolds all the time. And I was always sort of, I was always sort of, I was never afraid to change the strategy. But I remember there was a time that it was my shift and another shift, and we both had streaks of not having to go defensive. And it was sort of
right.
It was a competition, I guess, a little
Sure.
bit. They wound up beating us because we pulled up one night and the place was fully involved. And, I was like, well, I guess we can't go offensive on this one, But I think your ego has to be such that, understand that the fires, it's a dynamic force, and it's going to do what it's going to do. And there are times when it's going to get the upper hand, and you have to adjust that, because people that their egos are too big and they can't change what they're doing, that's when they get people hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have company officers, and I know that there are people that talk about rogue, company officers going rogue, and even chiefs going rogue. You go rogue on my fire gun, I'm going to chop your friggin' head off. That ain't going to happen. But the idea is, there were times when I used division commanders all the time, and I would consult with them and say, hey, look, I'm thinking we should pull out of here. What are you thinking? What I'm seeing don't look so good. And I've had times when they've said, you know what? No, I think we can hold this. We have lines in place. I think we can hold this. I'll let him do it. I understand. There are other times when the chief would, I'm looking at this, not so good. You think we should pull out? Yeah, most definitely. And I call the guy in the back. He's got fire blowing out the back, and yeah, let's pull out of here now. I think the chief that surrounds himself with good division commanders that understand each other and are all on the same page. I think that sort of takes the place of ego-driven firefighting.
No, I love
Because
it.
firefighting, there is no room for that. No room for that at all.
Man, so lots of
I
questions.
hope that answered it.
No, it's a great answer. Phenomenal answer. I loved it. I just got so many questions to pour through here as we're trying to figure out. Gregory Allen, Chief, how do you motivate the unmotivated? This is a question we get week in, week out. So if you have a good answer for it, man, that's a great book also.
How
But
do you motivate the unmotivated? Well,
how do you engage those that are there to just get by? But I wanted, yeah.
okay, so listen, some people, the movie, right? Some people you just can't reach. I think you have to kind of look and try and find what motivates people. Look, you can't motivate anybody. Motivation comes from within. My job as a chief and the job of a captain is to find out what, no motivation is about. Motivation is a bunch of feelings. Motivation is about what benefit will it be for this guy to do what we need him to do. For instance, we were in Weehawken and we went, and all of a sudden they wanted everybody to do CPR. And, a lot of older guys and nobody wanted to do CPR and everybody was against all that. And, it's like, listen, this doesn't just benefit the people out there. It benefits you. It benefits your family. It benefits you. Want to talk about being a brother. It benefits somebody sitting at this table if they start choking. I think you have to find out how to create a benefit for them. It's, you deal with the Y generation and how come generation and all that. And I get it, but listen, there's several things that go on there. Number one, the job has to be done. If you're not doing the job, listen, you don't have to like doing the job, but if you're not doing the job, we're going to have a problem. So I suggest that, you find it within yourself to figure out either you want to stay or you want to go. And if you want to go, goodbye. If you want to stay, we'll train you. We'll make an officer out of you, and you'll be an asset to this department. It's tough. I can't answer the questions. How do you motivate the unmotivated? Listen, all I can say is it goes case by case. You got to look and see what you're dealing with. You got to look and see what motivates them, and you have to find out, how the benefits that whatever you're trying to motivate them about is going to be for them. It's never easy. Listen, that's why you got those things on your collar. It ain't easy. Those are the challenges. You want to be an officer, you'll figure it out. Don't quit.
Boom. Hey, it may be preemptive. I'm going to give max points on that answer. It's a little early, but I'm giving max points on that answer. That was a phenomenal answer, and I timestamped it in my notepad. Chris Pace has a question for you. I'm not sure I understand the question, so Chris may have to clarify, but I'm going to throw it at you, see what you do with it. Do you think that Firehouse leadership starts with the officer or the entire crew?
Officer. The officer's in charge of the firehouse. Starts with the officer. However, the officer should use all different types of leadership, but a full contact officer is prepared. He's engaged. He is participative in his leadership style most of the time. If you are not bringing your people forward and creating mini versions of yourself, or what your job is? Your job is to create yourself, recreate yourself, create officers better than you are. If you're not doing that, then your crew is going to be left behind. You have to involve your crew. That having been said, the officer is always responsible. The officer's got to be a rock, not a bowl of jello, not a ghost, but firefighters who work under an officer that's a bowl of jello. Flood used to say you can never be better than your boss, which means if your boss is a sack of shit, it's hard for you to rise above that a lot of times. And it's sort of disengaging a little bit, But listen, I think it's a whole team effort, but the officer's in charge. People say, well, the senior firefighter and all that. No, the officer's in charge. The officer can utilize his team. He can delegate to his team. He can bring his team along. He can create stars of his team. And that's his job. Ed Flood we worked on ladder 222 in Weehawken. Every firefighter on ladder 222 became a deputy chief. Every single firefighter was a deputy chief. And in the old department of Weehawken, almost every firefighter that went to regionalization became an officer. So, you know, like your job as an officer is to make other officers, you know, and however you decide to do that, you know, listen, how to say this, an officer is not there to make life easy for his subordinates. The best you can do is not make life unnecessarily hard. That's applaudism. And Nick Saban said, if you want to be what do you say, sell ice cream?
Yeah.
You know what?
You want to be like,
yeah, you want to be liked, sell ice cream. You're not there to be liked, you know, you're not there to be liked, you know. And I had a very good friend who was a chief that said, I could be your friend and I can be your boss, but if I got to choose one, I got to be your boss.
right on. And if you don't choose that, you're abdicating your responsibility.
Yeah, you know, listen, it's great to have a team. It's great to develop your team, but you know what? The officer is in charge. Right. The firefighters can be in charge to some extent. They can be given that responsibility, but the officer has the ultimate accountability. I'm a big believer in that chain of command.
No, I love it.
You want to be a boss? Study.
Love it. No, and absolutely. If you want to make a difference in your department, study and promote so you can have an impact. And I'm not downplaying the senior man and the unofficial leadership.
No, not at all.
At all. But if you want to have an impact, study and promote.
Listen, I've had tremendous senior men on the job, and I've had tremendous captains on the job. I got to stand up because my leg is cramping. You know, and we encourage all of them to, you know, engage and be part of the game and you know, help us create great drills and things like that, you know, and they respond. You know why? Because it's contagious, you know.
All right.
We empower them.
No, I love empowerment. James Michelisco has a great question coming at you. Chief, what was your greatest challenge when you first got promoted? And what was your, excuse me, what was your greatest challenge as an officer throughout your career?
My greatest challenge when I got promoted was, you know, really it was the reality of thinking I could do my boss's job, and then the stark reality that I actually had to do his job. You know, everybody that goes from one side of the seat to the other, you know, sort of experiences that, you know, and you know what happens too? You get on a job, you go to firefighter 1, and you're on about 2.5 years, and you know, and on firefighter 1, we always tell them you're a nobody, we turn a nobody into a somebody, you know. You get on the job and you know, you get out of fire 1 and you're like, wow, I don't know a lot. And then you're on 2.5, 3 years and you think you know everything.
Sure.
And you start studying for office and you say, holy shit, I don't know anything. You know, you got to be humble like that. But I think with me, it was, you know, I had a lot of knowledge, but the, you know, crashing up against the rocks of reality of that I have to actually now be responsible for other people. That I think was the, you know, that was sort of the hardest sort of transition for me, I guess. Plus, I was only 28 years old. I got promoted very young.
Wow, that is
young. The guys who I got on at 23, the guys who worked for me were great. They were great. They were older than me, but they were great. They were professionals, you know, and they helped me, you know. Now the other thing, what was the other part of that question?
Biggest mistake, the biggest challenge you had when you first promoted, and the biggest challenge you faced from an officer position.
Well, I have to say the biggest challenge I got as an officer throughout my career, and especially was the regionalization. You know, we went from, you know, I went from a 50-man department to a 350-man department. I went from Weehawken. One day I was a Weehawken battalion chief. The next day I was a North Hudson battalion chief. I went from 19th Street in Weehawken up to 16th Street in Union City, which is a double house. Union City was, you know, kind of probably the department that got the most fires. You know, almost all of our mutual aid was in Union City. Everything burns in Union City.
Right on.
But you know, I had to work and lead, you know, 5 companies, one from North Bergen, one from Weehawken, 3 from Union City. So these were people that I didn't know. I knew them, I knew them somewhat,
Sure.
because we did mutual aid, we did automatic aid. So I knew them somewhat, but I had to go from being this guy they saw in the fireground, we all worked together, to a guy that was actually in charge of them. And, we moved everybody's cheese, we went from, you're on Union City engine 23. Now you're on North Hudson engine 2. We went from you can wear your Union City shirt to now you can't wear your Union City shirt, and you got to wear your North Hudson shirt. We had different SOPs coming out and different radio procedures, and there was, you want to talk about change, go to a department that regionalized and try and be a chief officer there on the line. It was a challenge, but I have to say this, with the exception of a few people, everybody was extremely professional. Like I professionally, to the point where, because you always said, that department over there, they suck, and that department,
right.
Professionally, to the point where I was actually shocked at how good these guys were and how dedicated they were. Like when we got there in the morning, I got there to 16th Street. These guys were all over the rigs like ants. There's saws starting, there's rigs being checked, pump operations. It was unbelievable what these guys were doing, and then at night, they pulled out the guitars after dinner, and they just played guitars, and and I'm like the new guy, and I'm the friggin' the ranking officer, I'm the chief, and I'm the new guy, But they welcomed me with open arms, and the meals were great, and this guy by the name of Frank Puka was the captain there that brought me through the Firehouse and introduced me to everybody. Eventually, he became a battalion chief, great guy. And all the guys that were there, and 99% of the guys in the regionalization were just tremendous. And there have, it was really cool. There have been unbelievable friendships made across the departments, not just myself, but, we'll go to like a Christmas party. I still go to the Christmas party. And there are people from still every town retired. And, in our best day on the old departments, let me just think how to say this. Our best day of the old departments, we weren't better than our worst day in North Hudson.
Oh, wow.
That's North Hudson was an absolute success. Listen, we still had 3-man engine companies and 3-man ladder companies. You can't change your manpower, but the professionalism, the fires that we fought, and the saves that were made, and the friendships that were made, and the things we went through in a lot of different ways and places. It just, I wouldn't could write a book about it. And I would
do. I hope you do. I really do. I think there's a lot of people that hope you do. I have a backlog of questions, so I'm just throwing them at you here. Okay. I love this one. It comes from John McCoy out of Virginia. What was your favorite fire that you have been to in your career? That one fire that you just blew it out of the water.
Well, I've been fortunate because I had so many great guys working with me to have some great fires with some unbelievable stops. The one that always comes back to me was about a year into regionalization. It's in the book, the Rock Harbor Fire. The Rock Harbor Fire was lightweight wood truss. We got there. It's all the way on the northeast end of the region. It's right on the Hudson River. And when we got there, the fire was just blowing up through the building. It got into the cockloft, into the attic. And I thought we were going to lose all the way down to the river. And we set up divisions. We went to about 6 alarms. We had like 4 water supplies, and we pinched the fire off. And we just kept rotating guys through this area. And at one point, I thought we were going to have to surrender the Delta exposure. And I had a great chief in there named John Eckroat, and Nicky Gazzillo was in the other exposure on the Bravo side. And I said to John Eckroat, it's not looking good here to me. What do you think? And he goes, we have 2 lines in here. The building has been searched. All the ceilings are down. We have no fire in here. What you're looking at on that roof is roof fire. Use your telesquirt, knock that down. So I had 4 divisions set up, and the fire unit, 3-story unit, collapsed right down into the garage. But the thing that helped us a lot, it burned through the roof. And once it burned through the roof, we didn't put a lot of pipe in there. We just let it go. And it wasn't going in these directions anymore. We were able to make that stop. But a lot of work, a lot of really hard-nosed firefighting, great division commanders, just a fire that could have gone, bad very, very quickly. And I mean, listen, I have a list of the fires that I've gone to. I do list better. I have my concert list. I have all that stuff.
Sure,
And
sure.
I kind of looked the other day, and I commanded something like 94 multiples, and I was just very fortunate that I had great guys. I had resources there relatively quickly, although it didn't always seem that way. But everybody kind of, as we got into the regionalization, everybody kind of knew what you needed to do and what you wanted to do. We had SOPs that put the first rigs in the places, but all the chiefs knew, like, you come to the command post in gear because you got the interior division, you got the Delta, you got Bravo, going in there, we're feeding you companies, you're giving me reports, and everybody knew that's what we were doing. So, when you have everybody on the same page like that, and the strategy is, okay, we're gonna look to stop it at this building right here, so we're gonna set up a pellet squirt, and just I think when you know the people you work for, and everybody's on the same page, and the department supports that sort of sort of like the way things were. I was lucky. I was able to, from the Weehawken Fire Department, where I only had 10 guys on duty, and for my very first fire, we lost the Chart House restaurant on the Hudson River, about a $9 million loss, to North Hudson, where I, had 35 guys on a first response, 30 guys, and I was able to see both sides of it, and I was able to figure out how to set up a fire ground. And when more people were coming in, how to keep that under control. I had a second fire at Rock Harbor that went to 6 alarms. We used pretty much the same strategy. We had about 250 firefighters on the scene. We had no cases of freelancing, none whatsoever.
Wow.
Everything was set up properly, and it was all about, listen, we didn't get that way overnight. We got that way from learning from our mistakes and, lessons that we learned. But we never had a freelancing problem in North Hudson. We still don't. There's still no freelancing problems there because everybody understands how it's supposed to work.
And Sean Bryant even brought that up when I asked the earlier question about memorable fire. He said, "Don't forget about Rock Harbor Fire Number 2, Chief." So he sent that in there. So I had to throw that in there. Marco Isom says, "What is one thing that you've learned from a tough fire that if you could have replayed it again, it would have gone smoother?" So with hindsight, obviously, hindsight being 2020.
Yeah. A couple of things come to mind. Probably something along the lines of maybe we didn't call enough people quick enough, or people didn't get there quick enough. That might have been one of them. But there were times when we had other fires going on in the region. What I wanted to do versus what I could do weren't always the same thing. I remember coming from one fire was a fire in West New York, and we were finishing up on that fire, and we got dispatched to this for a smoke condition on Kennedy Boulevard, and I pull up from one side, and one of my battalions pulls up from the other side. I can't even see him, and I'm getting on the radio saying, "Look, I got a heavy smoke condition. I have a working fire. I just don't know where it is. I'll let you know." And turned out it was a vacant factory, and we did try our best to get in there and take care of business in there, and we wound up having to pull out of there,
Right.
But tough fire. Well, no, the toughest fire I ever had was one that I really didn't even command. Was Vinny Neglia was killed. That was a tough fire. That was a tough fire from the standpoint of trying to keep everyone focused. And I remember one of the captains, one of the best captains I ever worked with, a guy named Scotty Broking. My shift was coming on. The 4th platoon was going off. They were moving everybody to a firehouse where the CISD people were. And Vinny died. He died in a backdraft. There was a shaft that was covered over with a thermopane skylight. And there was a heavy odor of smoke. The fire started in the shaft, and they got inside the building, and they must have changed the dynamics of the apartment. And there was a backdraft in the shaft and the cock off, and Vinny got caught on the bed side of it. And and Vinny was one of those guys that, everybody knew. He was a guy that everybody knew when he was there, firefighter, fearless, great guy, nuts. But Scotty Brokings grabbed us and kind of brought us together. And I was, sort of engaged in command stuff at the time because I had taken over command. And I seen him grab all my guys, and I could hear him saying, he goes, listen, we still have a job to do. Don't lose focus here. We still have a job to do. It was still a very active fire. There was still a fire and 2 cock lofts and rolling through another shaft. And, that might have been the toughest. And it was probably one of the most proud moments I ever had, that, they stayed focused and we did what we had to do, listen, I've had a very blessed career, and I don't, it's funny, I'd have to look at my fire list, but I don't really remember that many fires going bad, some very tough ones, some real snotty fires,
Right.
Some fires that, we had a rain roof, or, we couldn't get the roof open because it was about that thick, and then that affected us, and it got into the cock loft. And, listen, all fires go out eventually. You didn't start them, but you just do your best and make sure you have enough people and make sure those people are rotated properly. And one of the most important things I can tell you is be careful of your span of control violations. Every time an incident commander fails, not every time, but most of the time, it's because of span of control violations. You have too many people on the scene, and you have not put people in charge of places that you can't see. So I think if you're looking to be successful on a fireground as a chief, and you're striking additional alarms, all that, make sure your span of control stays in a good place, because that's where you're going to be overwhelmed. That's where you're going to run into problems.
Great question, man, and great answer. Thank you for it.
That was a good question.
I have so many questions coming at you. You still good to go?
Yeah, sure.
Energy level. Just checking your energy level. Cody Brooks wants to know.
I'm good. I'm good.
Chief.
Listen, this is I didn't do anything today, so listen. You want to hang? I'll hang. We're scrapping, right?
The batteries are charged. All right, Chief. What do you think about the leaders/officers explaining the why? I have seen men go through hell for a leader that explained why, because we had an understanding of the task ahead. So how important is the why to you, and the new generations asking the why question?
Listen, if a fire officer cannot explain the why, then he might not be worth his salt. But I know a firefighter does have the the firefighter does have these. Listen, they're going to ask why. I get it. That's what they do. That's their generation. But you know what? An officer has to be able to explain why. He has to know the ins and outs of that department. And listen, the questions. Here's one of the things that happens when you get too many whys. We start to sort of downplay the importance of the person. The question may not always be important, but the person's always important. And listen, do we have pain in the ass guys? Absolutely. I've had tons of them. Tons of them. Listen, Vinny Neglia, God bless his soul, he was the biggest pain in the ass of the department. We loved him to death, but he was a pain in the ass. And when they ask why, because I said so, leadership is never good leadership. All right. You should be able to explain the why as an officer. An officer should never lose their patience with firefighters asking why. Listen, I was the director of the fire academy. We run Firefighter 1. We got 36 people asking why.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? No, we do at the beginning of class. We tell them, like what the deal is. If you're transparent, your people shouldn't have to ask why.
Ooh. That's beautiful right there, man. That really is, man.
Well, listen, you know what? Listen, and you're also going to run out of patience sometimes with people. And, it's like, listen, you know what? If you want to know why, I'm going to tell you where to go find the answer here. I want you to go look and find it. Then I want you to write a short report on what you read. You want to, what the best low-level discipline is? Have somebody write a report. You know what? Guy gets off the rig, his chin strap's not on. Well, that's charges. But his waist straps are undone. Something happens where it's not what you want. You have him write a report. You have if he has a chief, his officer might be writing a report too. Nobody likes writing reports. It's a great way to sort of balance what you need to get done and what you're getting done.
Nice. Nice. No, I like the, hey, there's, it's the scrap. So you got questions coming at you. Amanda Miller has one coming at you. I love this question. And I apologize in front of it, but I love the question. If you were sent to a crew now that you did not know, that had a bad reputation, they were incompetent, bad attitude, etc., what would be the handful of things you would absolutely do, and what would you want to know ahead of time? So you're being sent to a crew with a bad reputation. How would you handle it?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first thing I would do is I try to do a little homework with the people that had them before, but also I do homework on the people that had them before. Because listen, it's not normal to have a crew with a bad attitude. It's not normal for that to happen. So I think a lot of it has to do with the officer that was there. And here's another thing. Anything that goes wrong in a department falls at the foot of the chief of department. Chief of department is responsible for everything that happens on a department. He's responsible for everything. And likewise, the company officer is responsible. Listen, you ever see how people look like their dog after a while? A fire department will always look like a chief, a division will look like a deputy, a battalion like a battalion, and a company like a captain, right? So I'm going to take a look. I'm going to see, what do I know about that captain that had these guys? Now I'm going to look and see these guys. And I'm not going to go in there. And this is what I do with my shift. When I got promoted to deputy, I went to the worst shift on a department. It was a lot of experience, but didn't have any real leadership. And not that I was the greatest leader. I was, cutting my teeth, as a deputy. But Flood sent me there. And he said, you'll thank me one day. And I did. I did, because I was able to mold them in my sort of the way I wanted them molded. And sometimes people with a bad reputation are just looking for a better leader. And if you can be a better leader, if you can sort of figure out what makes them tick, if you can get them to be part of your team, listen, there's no bad firefighters. There's bad officers that fail to bring firefighters along, and make them part of their team. Listen, that being said, I could just sit here because I'm retired 8 years now and say, you know what, it shouldn't be that way. But I firmly believe in what, a company with a bad reputation is a reflection on the officer that they had. And if you're going there, you have to do some homework on why that is, because there's a good chance these guys they may come around. They may come around, and if they don't, listen. Now they're your problem. Mm-hmm. Now they're your problem. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do? But the other end of it is, if you have a department that also supports the officers below, which our department did. Chief Flood and the chief, and the deputies and the battalions, we supported the company officers. We also supported the firefighters. But you don't think we didn't have the companies with bad reputation and I don't want to use the word reputation. I'm going to use the word bad attitude, bad attitude. And well, no, let me just say this. We did have companies with bad reputations that they weren't the best companies. You know what? You do your best to strengthen them, and strengthening them may be shaking them up a bit, which means maybe that bad reputation company is not going to be that bad reputation company. And we're going to maybe, and dare I say, maybe pull some transfers out of there. For the good of the department, and that's not always the answer. I get it. I understand. You wouldn't transfer a half empty cylinder to another rig. You fill a cylinder. So I would tell that company officer or myself, let's see what we can fix. Let's see how we can fix it. Let's not give up on guys because somebody said they have a bad reputation.
Chief, all I can say at this point is, you got to quit with the sound bites. I only have this, dude. That was so many mic drops, man. I mean, seriously, people are saying that. Boom. Someone.
I'm a bag of quotes, man.
Dude, 100%. Smoothbore Cartel said boom, all caps, and then not even 1 minute later said boom again. So you're crushing it with that. Sean Bryan coming at you again, and he said, ask the chief how he relates a manifold to the command post. For example, everyone goes through it and how it further relates to tactical reserve.
Okay, so again,
I already like this analogy, but I want to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is freelancing is you know, it's the death penalty, you know. So here's what it is. My first arriving companies have SOPs. First engine does this, second engine does that, third engine does that, right? First ladder, right? Everyone else reports to the command post. Okay, now the first arriving companies, I'm not there yet. All right, so I get there, I set up the command post. The command post is like a manifold. Everything goes through it, nothing goes around it. Okay, so every company arriving after that, unless I have something to specifically tell them to do, like get a water supply or something like that, they come to the command post. All right, now I may stage them, I may put them in the game. Okay, now here's the other thing. When you put them in the game, one of the things that happens is when they come out of the game, they'll go over to their rig to change their cylinders, and then they'll go back in. Not happening. The expectation and the policy is you come out of the building, you come to the command post. Hey, you guys okay? Need to change your cylinders? Yeah, we are. Okay, go change your cylinders. Come back here to the command post. I may put you in rehab. I may move you to staging. I may redeploy you. But you never, okay, so you have operating, rehab, staging, arrival, and release. In the middle is the manifold. You never change, you never go from one of those boxes to another box without coming to the command post, because that represents freelancing. All right. There actually is, and it will be in the book, and it's in all my classes, a flow chart on that. And it's very simple because all I'm doing is doing this when I'm in the classroom. You hit. But every single time you come through the organizational manifold at a command post. Because if you don't, the only way I can tell you, the only way I can keep you safe is if I know where you are. If I don't know where you are, then you're freelancing. Then I'm going to cut you loose. I'm going to send you back, and you're going to have to write a 40-page report on why you were freelancing.
Love it. Thank you.
That's what he's referring to, the organizational manifold. But you know what? It took us 10 years to get there in North Hudson. You know, Jersey City runs it the same way. Hoboken. It takes a while. You know, you got to start from scratch and keep scratching. You know, if you're not doing it at small incidents, it'll never work at a big incident.
Right.
You know, it takes a while to do something. It requires discipline. It requires buy-in. It requires a united front. So it's important that people understand that. You know,
J-Lo, one of my favorite people on the planet, Justin Lorenzen says, how important is it for the officer to allow themselves to fail in front of their crew and be able to explain the why on the training ground?
Listen, nobody's perfect. You know, officers are going to fail. Chiefs are going to fail. Firefighters are going to fail. It's okay. It's a learning point. You know, it's a learning environment. You know, if you don't learn something every single day in the firehouse, it's just like what Flood said. Then, you know, whether you learn something from your own crew or from a book or from an article, you know, you got to learn something, you know, and it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. You know, failure is just another way to sort of reset and start it over again. You know, failure is not failure if you learn from it.
No, and training ground is where we want to fail.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to. That is the goal. Like, let's figure out where we're going to fail on the training ground so that we can not fail when we get to the real deal. Absolutely.
Exactly. And if you're an officer and you're allowing your people to fail on the training ground, that's fine. But if you don't say something about it, right? If you don't say, like, you know, the guy's not wearing his gear properly, he's not doing something properly, you just, good enough. Well, good enough is not good enough. Excellence is the only option, you know? So as an officer, your job is to make sure you fix those things. But should an officer fail? Of course an officer can fail. And then he can't be so ego-driven that he won't admit that failure. Or, listen, if you're going to fail, you might say to you guys, hey, listen, what'd you think happened there? Well, you know, how could we have done that better? Because if I fail as an officer, we fail as a team. You know, if you fail as a firefighter, we fail as a team.
Right on.
So right on, brother.
No, I love it. John Patton coming. Chief, give us your thoughts on face-to-face with your companies versus radio communication. Where do you fall?
When they get on the scene, I want to see them face to face. Again, like I said, my first alarm companies are going to do their business, right? If I want a company to do something before they get there, I'll get them on the radio. But other than that, it's face to face. I'm not sitting down the block in the car. And this is where he said, and he had this quote a little bit similar, somewhat right. Command presence starts with being present. Vince Lombardi never coached a game from the locker room. The most experienced guys should be on the fire. The ones that most responsible. I want to, what I know it is? I want to see the in-service and ready status of my companies. I want to drink in that fire. I want to sink my teeth into it, and I want to see those guys ready to go. That's why I like the face-to-face. That's why I like that. But that having been said, I need progress reports from around the fireground. I got exposures. I got an interior division. I got a roof division. I got a Delta and a Bravo. I'm going to ask for progress reports from those guys, and based on that, the companies that I have for my tactical reserve, which hopefully I have at that point, all I'm doing is moving the shells. That's all I'm doing, And one guy did talk about tactical reserve, and I forgot to talk about that a little bit. Tactical reserve is a requirement if your incident is still escalating. But the rule of thumb I always use: if my incident's still escalating and I don't have at least 3 companies with nothing to do with the command post, I'm striking another alarm.
Nice.
I just don't, and I don't care where they're coming from. Everybody wants to come in the fire, but I don't. My goal is to have people with nothing to do, because the people in those buildings are going to get tired, and if I don't have people to spell them, and listen, our companies come quick, but it seems like forever. I'm sure with a lot of departments and a lot bigger response areas, it is forever, but you should always be striving, if the incident's still escalating, for a tactical reserve.
No, I love binaries. I love simple things that you can teach people, especially new people into the position. And I love things where you can say, if I don't have at least 3 companies with nothing to do, I'm striking an alarm, and it's escalating. You know what I'm saying? Like you got the qualifier in there. Yeah, absolutely. Love it. New book. I want to talk about 4th edition because it's coming out. I'm pausing the questions for a minute, even though there's still a ton of questions. So I'm not ignoring the questions, but I do want to talk about the book. Fireground Strategies, 4th edition. It's coming out.
Yeah. Well,
already it's been amazing, but the stuff coming that is going to be in there, you're talking about command considerations for active shooter, civil unrest, the new building construction, lithium ion stuff. It's all going to be in this book, man. I'm super stoked because it was already a phenomenal book to begin with.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. Listen, I steal everything that's in there, by the way.
100%. Hey, there's nothing new since Ben Franklin, so.
But I'm actually, I'm just about done with the second run through. I have pretty much most of the pictures in place now. I've got about 150 new pictures in there. Ron Jeffers, great photographer from the North Hudson area, Jersey City. Great pictures. Damian Danis, another guy from North Jersey, a lot of great pictures. But I got a lot of stuff in there on newer type construction, the new like tall mass timber stuff, and
right.
That's all new stuff, and I'm not proposing that I know everything about it. I'm gonna be talking about it, and then asking questions about it, the jury's out on this stuff, and there, I'm also utilizing where the NFPA 1700 now uses exterior control and interior control. So I've sort of changed my terminologies to that a little bit. Again, some other things that like with transitional attack, and potentially using like a bumper line, for your transition line if it's down the alley while the other guys are preparing the attack line at the front door. What was to say we're not going to stretch all the way down, stretch all the way back? Just one guy take the bumper line down, throw some water in the window, and then we just go in. And there's other things that be wary of the structural carcass, the building we've lost, that we killed too many guys standing around. What else do I got there? Interesting. I'm talking a little bit about RIT as well, and one of the things that I came up with was a thing called the RAT, and the RAT is the rapid assist, is the RIT assist team, and the RAT is part of your tactical reserve. but they are only committed to the RIT if the RIT goes to work. So if you're an engine company in a tactical reserve, and I tell you, you got the rat, you may do a little bit of scouting with the RIT team, but you still can go into fire building as an engine company. But if the RIT gets activated, you go with them, and you're going to help them. You may have to bring equipment in. The thing is, everybody can be a rat, but not everybody can be a RIT. And the idea is, I can out of my tactical reserve, I can rotate the rats around, and because it's sort of an anti-frenzy mechanism where you get a Mayday, everybody starts to go berserk and you're looking for people and all that. Now I got an extra company just to help the RIT handle their initial duties, so that's one thing. The next thing is I put in there was about accountability. How many departments have no accountability officer?
Right.
It's, when I was in Weehawken, I used to have to write on the car with a marker. Sometimes it was permanent and it wasn't a dry erase. We were compound after the fire.
A little Sharpie action.
Yeah. But the accountability, there's two ways to do it. One, you're a volunteer department. You got these old guys that don't come on. They still come into the scene, but they're outside guys now. They're ex-chiefs and everything else. Why can't that be your accountability officer? Add a command advisor, right? And then the other thing, which is a novel idea that I know, the love affair will end here tonight. Why can't your RIT team, after softening the structure, be your accountability team? Why can't they run your rehab, run your command board, do all that stuff? Because what's the most important thing the RIT needs to know? They need to know where everybody is.
Yeah.
So while they're standing by, after softening the structure, they can run the accountability board. So these kind of things are, that's in the book, and there's a lot of new stuff in there, knee walls and dead man rooms, and I'm really excited for it. It's going to be the last edition. And the last one was going to be the last edition, but Alan Brunacini said to me, well, why in the world would you want to do that? And it was about a month before he passed away, and I gave him my leadership book, and he said, well, what are you doing with the other book? I said, third edition should have said last edition. And he said, well, why would you want to do that? You have a brand. You're still valid. You're still here at the FDIC editorial board. You're still doing. He goes, write the fourth edition. So you know what? The fourth edition is going to have, there's a lot in there. There'll be a dedication with Alan Brunacini and Ed Flood. Ed Flood passed away 2 years ago. That was a big loss for me. And we thank God I got his genius on paper in full contact leadership, because listen, there's a lot of leaders out there, and I've seen a lot of leaders, and I've met a lot of leaders. There is no one holds a candle to Ed Flood. No one.
Wow. That's high praise. High praise.
But it helped me get where I was.
The fourth edition is the last edition. That's what you're saying. Yeah,
you know why? I stepped down, give it to somebody else. By the time that's out 7 years or whatever, I'll be off the job like 15 years.
I'm not Alan Brunacini, but I'm gonna say, why would you want to do that? There you go. You heard it here first. Why would you want to do that? So fourth edition is coming soon, though.
There may be another leadership book in there or something, but
okay. Lithium. Speaking of lithium ion, Cody Brooks wanted to know, Chief, have you heard about the new stuff for lithium ion batteries called cell block? Anything like that?
No, I have not.
I have not heard of it, so I was just throwing it out there.
I wonder if it's a suppression prevention type thing where, almost like with the solar panels, where they in England they have those things that are almost like extinguishers, and they make the solar panel opaque, and it stops.
Oh, really?
Transmission. Yeah. We don't have it in America yet, but I'm wondering if that's something somebody's coming up with, that when you get that thermal runaway, one to the other, to the other, to the other, maybe that'll do that. I'll have to look in that. I'm not done with the book yet. It may wind up in there.
Might be there. You heard it. No, and it may be something that gets in, it just kind of breaks that thermal runaway chain. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, listen, you know what? We got to come up with something, because there's some dangerous shit. 4 people were killed today in an e-bike repair store in New York City.
Crazy.
And they are on the firemen were hurt.
Tip of the spear when it comes to lithium ion, with the amount they're facing. Coming at you from J-Lo once again, Chief, how important is it for the officer to engage themselves in training with their crew even when they fail?
Oh, it's very similar to the answer I said before. If you're an officer not trained crew and taking part in the training, I used to do my best to take part in the training, even as a deputy. I came up with a bunch of the drills, and
Right, right.
um, you know, uh, you have to take part in the training, and part of the training is not always getting it right, and maybe sometimes, and this was for me was a great one, was I was when I first became a captain, I come out of college, didn't know the difference between a wiffle ball bat and a screwdriver. I had good firefighters, and when we went on squad runs, boiler problems and uh, you know uh, malfunctions of boilers and electrical problems and water leaks. I didn't know what I had to learn as I went, but I had great firefighters that taught me a lot about those things. So as an officer, tap into the resources that your people have. Tap into their talents. It's really important. Your firefighters can teach you a lot, and again, you can teach them a lot. But the thing, a great officer will also admit when he doesn't know something.
Right.
His ego can't be that big that he can't say, "Well, they know more than me." Listen, if they know more than and they pass it on to you, just like you pass it on, now the company. You know, and there's a great book out there for first-time officers. And if I may throw a plug out there, Frank Montagna from New York City. He was a battalion. He wrote a book called Responding to Routine Emergencies, and it's all about those things: gas leaks and water leaks and electrical problems. And it helped me a real lot as a first company officer. I don't even know if it's still in print. I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure.
Nice. There you go. So many resources. Pulling up. Make sure I got everything. I'm not wanting to leave anybody out. There's so many questions coming at you, Chief. And this is what I always tell people is make sure when you get time in the future, go back and look at the video and look at all the comments, because last count it was around 200 and something on comments. So
Wow.
you're getting a very small snippet from me as I pull out. There's a ton more that you're missing as I pull out the highlights.
That's great for this old friggin' smoke
No.
eater. I'm really honored to be in the show with you here tonight, and I'm floored, man. I'm
Dude,
floored.
brother,
Thank you for and the people out there, man, and the dedication, the passion. I
the
love it.
audience. Here's the two things I always say, and I'll say it at the end of the show, like I always do: is the audience makes the scrap magical because they ask the best questions, and then the guests.
Mm-hmm.
I still am blown away by the fact that I get to sit here on today. It's a Tuesday evening, and just talk to one of the fire service giants. I mean, I'm not trying to like put you on the spot, but that's the truth, man. You wrote Fireground Strategies, and yeah. So anyway, long story short, I'm blown away by it. So thank you very much. Final questions coming at you. I'm looking at these last three. How do you attempt? This comes from Leighton Hoxiang. I butcher it every time I try, Leighton. I'm sorry. How do you attempt to correct bad habits and lead those who don't respect the house chores, don't respect the leadership, and act like they are unaffected by written reprimands? Coming from a lieutenant perspective is what he says. So somebody just doesn't care if he gets written up and doesn't care about tradition.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of people out there with a lot of personnel problems, man.
Brother, welcome to the scrap, because that's the questions that come.
Yeah. Listen, you know what? Sometimes, and it's the last card you want to play is the bludgeoning. Some people you're not going to get through to until you threaten their job. Sometimes you got to play hardball. And here's what I always say as an officer: my ability and the bling I got on my collar as a deputy can make a battalion or a captain or a firefighter a lot more uncomfortable than they can make me. Now, that's also a function of the support the department gives you. So if I'm getting lip from a captain, or whatever, and I never did, but very rarely. But
right.
idea is, look, your day is not going to get any friggin' better unless you straighten your ass out and we talk about this. And and I'll explain why it is that you have to do what you have to do. But these are the things you can't get frustrated. And this is why you got the stuff on your collar. Anybody can lead when the waters are calm. Your job is to lead when the slope is slippery, when when things are not going that well, because if you can't do that in a firehouse, I don't expect you to do it in a fireground either. You have to be a 24/7 leader, and what I would do is, if I was that lieutenant, I would consult with my superior or a colleague that I respected, maybe a lateral colleague, another lieutenant. You gotta get you can't go to work and be frustrated, because you know what's going to happen. You're going to go home and kick your dog. That's what's going to happen. You have to take care of your business, and if you're not taking care of your business in the firehouse, then who else is going to do that? Listen, it's easy for me to sitting here, touchdown, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to say that sitting here, but I've been there, okay, and understand that the power of the pins that you're wearing have some weight in bringing people into the fold, because there may be times that, well, their day's not going to get better if they're not going to be in the fold. And you don't care about being written up. Well, you know what? How do you care about being suspended? How do you care about losing your job?
Right.
How about that? I don't care. If you want to play hardball, I'll go there. But that's never where I want to go. Never where I want to go. And a lot of times that happens because we don't set the proper expectations. The department is not supporting what we're doing, and we're not setting the proper expectations. So, what I would say to you, young man, is read Full Contact Leadership, and then give it to your superiors.
I love it. I cannot argue whatsoever, man. Thank you for another great answer. With all that being said, I'm going to move on and say, I always like to ask this question: book or books? Obviously, Full Contact Leadership, obviously Fireground Strategies, but book or books that you think firefighters should be reading?
Okay. Collapse of Burning Buildings by Uncle Vinny Dunn.
Vinny, yeah.
Right? Was on my promotional lists, and also building construction for the fire service. If you don't understand building construction, you don't belong on a job. You don't belong commanding anybody. John Norman, Fire Officer Handbook of Tactics, great book. There's a great book out there, and I recommend this to everybody, and it's a very difficult book to get. It's called Winning the Fire Service Leadership Game, and it's written by a guy named Hugh Caulfield. Hugh Caulfield was the special projects manager for the New York City Fire Department, and whenever somebody had a problem with personnel in their battalion, in their company, this guy would come in, and he wrote a great book about how games are played in the firehouse. And we could talk all day about this one,
right?
But how games are played in the firehouse, and the job's not on the level, and you could always be hurt. So the most important thing is play the game as close to the chest as possible, and play the game as close to the rules and regulations as you can, understanding that the people above you may not be playing the game by those rules, but you can't do anything about that because they're your superiors. But if you're not playing the game by the rules, and your superior is, now he's going to come down on you. Like, it's a really interesting dynamic, the book, and it's actually the father of Full Contact Leadership. It's really where full.
And the name of that one was, say it again.
Winning the Fire Service Leadership Game by Hugh Caulfield. Tremendous book.
All right, I love it. I haven't heard that. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. Well, Frank Ritchie's book I'm reading right now, Command Presence. I really like it. Frank Ritchie is one really, really great friend, but his book is set up in such so that it's easy to read. It's in chunks, and that's what Frank's good at, because Frank's a chunk guy. That's a really, really good book. And like I said, Norman's book I read a million times. Brunacini's book. Off the top of my head, Safety and Survival on a Fireground by Uncle Vinny.
Brother,
just great books out there, and extremely chock full of information. For me.
Yeah, brother. You said Vincent Dunn. You said John Norman. You said Alan Brunacini, Frank Ricci. No, without a doubt, brother. That's an amazing list right there. If that's all you read, then you're going to be a better off firefighter. So I absolutely love that answer. Now, Chief, we have a thing we've done. You're number 197 on the scrap, and we have a thing we've done for 197 scraps. For the first 120 or so, we did the 5 questions for firefighters.
Right.
Excuse me. And then we changed them and we made it the next 5 questions for firefighters, which is what I'm going to throw at you tonight. We're getting ready to get the whatever the next is going to be called. But
Okay.
For all that being said, the answers are 100% your opinion. There is no right or wrong. And then the points are arbitrary. They're assigned by me with the help of the audience. And so my question for you, first of all, is, are you ready for the next 5 questions for firefighters?
I guess so.
Let me get my sheet ready here.
Oh, boy.
All right, here we go. Number 1, to Chief Anthony Avillo. What single characteristic makes the difference between a run-of-the-mill firefighter and the go-to top-tier badass firefighter?
Passion. Passion will move you towards every success that you will ever have. If you don't have passion for the job, you don't belong in the job. I'm going to keep it short.
I like it. No, brother, you had it at Pat. Like, on passion, I love passion. First of all, I'm a passionate person. I love passionate people. I love passionate answers. But then you explained passion will move you towards every goal. 100% max point. Yeah, Gregory Allen says max points. Thank you. Yeah, max points. Max points. There they come. There they come. Yeah, they're flying in. Max from Sean Bryan. No, there they go. Okay. He said he's going to keep it short, so I will try to do the same. Number 2, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice as a rookie, what would it be?
Clean my gear. I was guilty of, I used to put my hands in my pockets and my fingernails would come out dirty. We wore black gear, and I could just imagine what it must have looked like if you put it in water. I've tried to do that as as time has gone on, and I'm a big advocate of cleaning the gear now. But my first 20 years on a job, easy, maybe my first 25, we just didn't clean the gear. It was the salty generation, and if I had to do it over again, I would clean my gear, because God knows what can happen between now and tomorrow.
I'm telling you right now. I'm gonna read you what people are saying, but I'm gonna tell you this: that's the first time anyone has ever said that as an answer to number 2, which is go back in time. Because what you're doing is taking the knowledge we have now and going back in time to when we were ignorant and we loved being smoky and sooty and covered in cancer, basically.
Yeah.
And
I wore my mask. My mask, but we didn't have hoods back then, and your gloves would be filthy, and you'd take them off, and then you'd eat something, and you bite your nails,
Or even if you wore a hood, you just took it down and wore it around your neck for the next hour and a half. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 100%, man. And there we go. That's what people said. Max points, max points, maximum. Not even a question on this one. MP, most excellent answer. Truth, clean is the new
I should have these people working for me.
Dude, hey, it's a great answer. They're not saying it. They're believe me, if that wasn't Max, they would not be saying it. You absolutely crushed that. I've never heard that before. Excellent answer, my brother. Number 3. What is your favorite training drill?
We did on my shift a knot gauntlet, and we set it up. I mean, lots of different. I've drilled for you. I love throwing ladders. I love doing that. But the best one we did, and we didn't even know how well it would come out. It was somewhere close to when I was retiring. We did 2 drills. The first one was a knot gauntlet. And the knot gauntlet, we put out a piece of paper, and it had all the knots you needed to have, all the tools you needed to tie up. And what we did was we sent it out around 4th of July, just before 4th of July, to all the battalions. And we didn't know if people were going to buy into it or not,
Sure.
And the way it worked out was at the end of August, we wanted a company winner. At the end of September, end of August, well, we wanted a company winner. A couple of weeks later, we wanted the battalion winner, and then we had the championships, right? So we didn't know if it was going to take off. We set up all kinds of rules. I had my safety officer was the ultimate scorekeeper, and what happened was we'd start to hear guys going out in the afternoon up to Hudson County Park in the 3rd Battalion, And we don't know what they're doing, but what happens is where we are, you get guys from the 1st Battalion and 2nd Battalion detailing to the 3rd Battalion. Now they go up there and like, hey, these guys are practicing. So now you get a 2nd Battalion going out and the 1st Battalion, and now the bravado and everybody chest thumping and all this thing takes on a life of its own. And it was a great, great experience. It was esprit de corps. It was teamwork. It was motivation and action. It was all the things that you want your shift to do, and my shift was like 65 guys, and we wound up having the championship. And all we did, we had this piece of wood that we stained, and we just put a piece of rope with, like, I think it had a figure eight on a, and we nailed it to it. We put Group 1, 2014 or whatever, not gauntlet champion. And what happened was, at the end, we wound up taking 5 years and less and 5 years and more, and we pitted those two guys against each other. And it was two guys from the same company.
Wow.
So it was a really cool sort of leadership in action type of drill. It was my favorite. We've done tons of drills that were really cool. This one was the coolest.
Again, Gregory Allen said max points. Competition breeds excellence. Max points for sure. Yes, if you don't use it, you lose it. Max points for knots, coming from Sean Bryant, who obviously loved knots. But, brother, when the esprit de corps that you described in that story of the people taking control of it and growing with it, man, I love
ownership,
that,
man. Ownership. Give them ownership.
Number 4, max points, by the way, 3 for 3. No pressure on number 4. What mistake have you learned the most from in your fire service career?
What mistake have I learned the most from in my fire service career? Probably not to disrespect my superiors. I had there would be times that my passion would sort of get the best of me, and what I felt was the right thing, and sometimes politics got in the way, and I'm dealing with something very similar to that right now. Not on the fire department, and I'm not really going to talk about it, but I wound up, pissing off the chief of department one time because something had gone on, and it affected the whole department. And I stepped out and I said, you know what, chief, don't you ever stick up for us. And I said it in front of a couple of battalion chiefs, and immediately I regretted it. And Flood called me on it. One of the directors called me and said, you hurt him. And and the next day I came in, and he said to me, I apologized to him, and I said, listen, I was heated, I'm passionate. And he said, you know what your job is? Your job is to make me happy. The battalions make you happy. The captains make them happy. The firefighters make the captains happy. I make the directors happy. They make the mayors happy. He goes, that entails a lot of things, but you know what? You didn't make me happy that day. He goes, I could write you up for insubordination. I could pull you off the line, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to let you know that I was disappointed in your leadership qualities that day. I felt horrible. And I learned a lesson. I'm apologizing to this day to that guy, by the way.
Wow.
But I learned a big lesson. Like, be humble. Understand there are other things at play that you might not understand. And don't let your emotions get the best of you. As I said earlier, emotions and ego can't be with leadership and rank. And, I violated that, and not my best moment.
Beautiful. Hey, beautiful. Hey, regardless of it not being your best moment, I love whenever someone ties a answer to the 5 questions to something they were made a lesson out of earlier, and you absolutely did it. So 4 for 4, max points, which brings us to the final question, number 5. Heavy fire, searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on a vent inner search?
I'm a ladder guy with a ladder mentality. Anybody can pull hose. Anybody can squirt water. If you're a ladder guy, you should be able to. I did a thing for Jimmy Silvernail's book, and it's about the ladder mentality. and you're a ladder guy, you should be able to bite through locks and roofs and, you know, rip people from the fiery jaws of death. And, you know, I have a ladder mentality. So I'm going to vent and to search immediately. There is no doubt, but I'm going to make sure I get in there and sweep the floor before I go in for a victim and get in there and close that friggin' door before I search and then get the hell out of there. You know,
Right on.
yeah. Chief Flood used to be my ladder officer, and he used to say, Truck 222 responding in anger.
I love it. And
So,
John Patton said, truck guy. Hell yeah. James Michelisco said 100. VES. He's a truck guy from Sean Bryan. Breach. Yeah, there's so much going on right there.
yeah, I'm better at breaking things than putting them back together.
True truck mentality. I absolutely love it. Hell yeah. From BJ Breacher said, maximum max points. If you ain't chucking ladders, you ain't trucking. The ladders was in parentheses, by the way. So there you go. Hey, congratulations. Officially 5 for 5, max points, and answers I hadn't heard before. So I really want to say this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Because originality, man, it's tough after 100 people have been answering the same questions. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, unbelievably, I was impressed by it, man.
Thanks, my brother. I appreciate that, man. I'm humbled to be on this show, and all the people out here on it, man. That is the coolest thing, man.
No,
and you should be very proud of what you put together here,
brother. I'm humbled and proud. It's this weird thing where I'm so proud of what we do each week, but I'm also extremely humbled that like you agree to come and the audience agrees to come hang out and ask questions. Yeah, so it's a weird, yeah, I love it. I absolutely am proud of it.
It's a big love fest, man. Yes. Fire service is a love fest.
That it really does encapsulate it. And that officially, with your answers, makes it 197 scraps in the books. Anthony Avillo, an amazing evening. If someone wants to get a hold of you, what is the best way to do so?
Generally, my email is the best. I'm on Facebook. You can get me through the messenger, but my email is the best. It's deputy1, like deputy chief with the number 1, deputy1 at optonline, OPT online, all one word, .net. Deputy1 at optonline.net. So beautiful. Yeah, listen, I anybody wants to contact me, man, I'll always answer. I will always answer whoever contacts me, and all good.
All beautiful. Good. I want to read this one. Gregory Allen said this. He said, great answers, ... Best one was wash the gear. Every probie needs to hear that answer. And I wanted to read that because it really is that important. And someone said it earlier, and I missed it. Whoever said it, I'll scroll if I can find it. Because it's kind of no, I already lost it. But it basically said, a salty dog who still says, wash the gear. Because that's the mentality we came from.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Hey, listen, I'm a street kid. I'll always be a street kid.
There you go. That officially makes it 197 scraps of the books. Vigilantes. If you want to be a part of the Vigilantes, go to firehousevigilance.com. You can sign up there. It's $5 a month. Price of a cup of coffee. It's amazing. We do all sorts of stuff in there. We got private forums where we discuss stuff. We just did the Wall Bombs Fire with Rob Fisher. It was awesome. We do what's called the Scrap After Party, which we're getting ready to do here in a few minutes. We have vigilante meetups every conference where we get together and kind of chat because we're vigilantes. The coolest part, and I really mean this because I put this together for myself, and it's my own thing, and I've never been able to complete it. It's called the V90. I've never been able to complete it, but now I'm going to do it with the vigilantes. And I told him this, I kind of explained to him, I've made it to day 45. I've made it to day 63. I've never made it to day 90. And I want to make myself accountable to you. And I thought like 5 or 6 of the vigilantes would do it. We're like at like 75 people who are going to do this together. It's like really cool. And so there's no pressure on me to actually make it to day 90, but so that being said, be a part of it. The Scrap After Party is coming. What else do I need to do? I hyped that. Yes. Coming up next week, Ryan McCormick, man, first in Fire Conference, Arkansas, what he's got going on. Amazing. Clark Lamping. He is the week after, number 199 out of Vegas, which will take us to number 200. And man, what a benchmark I don't know if anybody's ready for Kurt and all that energy that is going to be number 200. So, my brother, Anthony Avillo, thank you for being such an awesome guest.
Thank you, my brother. I really appreciate it. And thanks for everybody out there that is living the passion and you know, it's all about the job, man.
Vigilantes, if you're going to be a part of this scrap after party, look in the private group. I'll post a link. We'll be in here talking about this scrap. Anthony is the guest. You're, of course, welcome to invite you. I had no pressure, but you're invited to come hang out for, it's only 20 minutes. 20 minutes no matter what. I've told people. I'll explain it in there. But audience, you guys are really the ones that make the scrap magical. Thank you for tuning in live. I love you all. Remember, mutts don't scrap. I hope the tone stays silent unless it is burning. Everybody stay safe out there.
Salute. Be safe, bro.